Hey guys, it's Mark from The Abstract here. In this chapter, we're going to discuss virtual drums a little bit further and the different built-in software instruments that Logic has that enable for drum programming. One of the most popular and versatile tools in Logic in general is the Ultrabeat drum synthesizer. It's way more than just a synthesizer. It is a drum sequencer, effects processor, and it's also a sampler. Let's break it down a little bit. So if we go into the instrument section of our particular channel strip, and we load in Ultrabeat drum synth, stereo's fine, it'll open this up. Every synth in Logic has a factory default setting. Very rarely do you stick to the factory default settings because they're very used. So Ultrabeat comes with tons and tons of different presets and different kit types to fool around with. Well, let's just focus on the default kit for now, although just so you know, if you go down to the, if you press on the drop-down arrow where it says factory default and you go down to drum kits and drum banks, these are all the different types of kits to play around with that are built into Ultrabeat. But let's just focus, like I said, on the default setting and talk about some different things that Ultrabeat is capable of doing. Now, as you can see, there are 25 different voices. And if you didn't count, I'm just letting you know, each kit comes with 25 voices already preloaded. And the way drum kits are usually mapped out is you have your kick drums on the bottom, followed by some snares and claps, followed by some toms, mid-toms, and then usually the cymbals and more noise elements come closer to the top. That's usually how most drum kits are mapped out, no matter what drum programmer or drum instrument you're playing around with. Battery is mapped out the same way. Slate drums are mapped out the same way. And the reason that is because you want to have some sort of uniformity when you're sequencing drums. It would take a long time for somebody to relearn a unique mapping pattern of a particular virtual instrument. So, no matter what company you're dealing with or what program you're dealing with, most drum software is mapped out with the kicks followed by snares and toms and then cymbals. So what you see here is usually a universal thing. The thing with Ultrabeat is you can do a lot more to your particular sounds than just the standard kick drum. Everything you see on this synthesizer are different ways that you can affect the sound overall. There are two oscillators that are working together to go into a filter. Here's oscillator 1, here's oscillator 2, and make sure if they're not turned on, they're not being used. But in this particular case, for the kick drum, they are being used, and it's routed to travel to the filter. Why? Well, it's a simple arrow pointing up from this oscillator, down from this oscillator, and everything seems to be traveling into the filter. You can turn off these things and it will disable that oscillator, or you can turn this one off, it'll disable that oscillator. There's many different ways to get unique sounds. And there's all sorts of different settings over here. You can affect the bandwidth parameters with built-in EQ, and you can pan certain things and spread them different ways. Within the filter parameters, you could enable noise filters and make your filters more high pass or band pass, add more cutoff resonance, and there's all sorts of different things that you might already be exposed to, or you should already have been exposed to, working with an LFO, different envelope filters, and all sorts of stuff like that. You can definitely expand upon these parameters to create new and unique sounds. Without getting too into the effects part of it, watch what happens when I click on a different instrument, pedal hi-hat. As you can see, without even playing the note, you noticed that the processing to create that note changed. So just know that there's, everything that you're hearing within this virtual instrument is predetermined by the routing that you see on the screen. Mid-tom looks like this. Clap 1 looks like this. It has some pretty intricate EQ settings already and some good filtering as well. Like I said, that's unique to the instrument, and you could definitely change that if you wanted. So within these different voices, there's a lot of things you can do to change the sound altogether. Well, first and foremost, you can solo out individual instruments. You can mute individual instruments. You can also pan instruments to a certain direction, left or right. And you can also swap out instruments. So right now you see that this instrument, this particular key on the keyboard, is assigned to kick 1. I'm going to click on kick 1 and I'm going to show you how. So within oscillator 2 of each of these different keys or in different sounds, there is a certain mode called sample mode. And within sample mode, this gives you an opportunity to load in a new sample of our choosing. Since there's already a sample loaded into this instrument, the first thing we want to do is right click and go down to init and change the sound that it's going to be. You don't have to change it to sample, but we're going to. You could change it to snare and it will change it to a snare sound. You can change it to a hat. Let's do hat 2. So as you can see, you can change them by simply going through the different presets built in to that particular key. Each key comes with 8 or so different presets for that particular key, for that particular noise. It also comes with the sample mode down here. So if I click sample, it will automatically pull up the sample mode parameter in the second, built into the second oscillator. If I were to play it, it's not playing anything. And that's because we now have the opportunity to load in a sound of our choosing. The way to do that is where it says no sample loaded, you click load sample. And I am going to pull a different sound in there. Let's see. Just a standard shaker sound. Open it, and you can see how this little box now has a waveform in it. This waveform represents the sound that we loaded into it. Now, when we play this key, it's going to have our shaker sound that we loaded. So the cool thing about Ultrabeat is even though it does come with some pretty cool default sounds, you can load in your own unique ones to create your own kit. And there's actually a certain setting within Ultrabeat. If we go down to the drop-down arrow under Factory Default, go to Drum Kits, and drag and drop samples, there's an entire preset where every single instrument is blank, allowing us to build our own unique kit from every key in this particular instance. So if you wanted to take the time to do that, this is definitely a way to do that and have automatic sense of uniqueness right off the bat, working with your own unique drum kit. So that's one cool feature. Let's go back to, let's choose classic UK hip hop. Now, a lot of these come with, different volume parameters for each of the sounds. You can adjust the volume by grabbing the blue bar and moving it. Doesn't necessarily have to be a certain volume. That's just the preset that it sets it at. So I mentioned earlier that there are 25 voices that you're capable of working within one instance of Ultrabeat. There's one unique quality built off of the 25th voice. The 25th voice is this top voice. Now, I'm going to try my best to describe the science behind this. It is a very interesting concept. Ultrabeat has the capability to chromaticize whatever sound is built into the 25th voice of the sampler. Chromaticize means assign a pitch to the sound chromatically. Most of the built-in presets, if not all of them, let's try Boutique 909, comes with the 25th voice being a pitched instrument. Why pitched? Because it would make sense to chromaticize or assign more pitch to an instrument that's already pitched. So Ultrabeat was like, okay, or the makers of Ultrabeat was like, okay, so let's make this easy on our users and make our presets contain pitch assigned voices for the 25th voice on our sampler. So most of these presets will contain something that's pitched, even fizzy beats. It says bass hit. Now they're going to sound unique to the particular sound that you're using, but because it's chromaticizing it, you're able to then play this sound and move chromatically up from there, and it will maintain pitch and assign proper chromatics to that voice. I'm going to go ahead and move up chromatically from this note, essentially taking us above the 25th voice. And I just keep going up chromatically from that note, and it will continue until, pretty much forever. And that's the cool part about the 25th voice. It assigns pitch parameters to the sound. Now, I mentioned earlier that you can swap instruments out to create your own unique kit. Let's try that for the 25th voice. It has a bass hit in here, but I'm going to go ahead and load in Hat 1 that is built into it. That's what Hat 1 sounds like if we now assign that to it. But watch what happens if I start moving up chromatically from that. That's a beautiful thing. You can load in a percussive tone, and Logic will perform an algorithm to pitch that tone to make it sound chromatic. Let's load in a less pitchy tone. I'm going to go to sample, and I'm going to unload the sample that's in there and load a new one. Let's do something that's completely unpitched, like a clap. Let's put that one in there. So now the waveform looks like a clap, and it sounds like a clap. But listen very closely as I move up chromatically, what happens to the clap tone? It gets thinner and thinner and thinner as you move higher in frequency. So it's not necessarily assigning pitch to that sample, but it's taking away frequencies as if you're applying a filter to it, as if you're applying a high-pass filter to it. You're getting rid of the lows. And that's essentially another way to prove that you can assign pitch to this particular sample. Let's do another sample. Let's do the built-in kick drum. Now listen as I move up. So as you can see, there's a lot happening as I move up in pitch. The tone of the instrument is changing. And no matter what you load into that 25th voice, the same sort of algorithm will be performed on it to alter the tone overall. Now, once you alter the tone overall using the different pitch parameters, you can still apply different filtering procedures on it, apply noise to it, and then add more resonance. There's so many different things. You can adjust the bands for the EQ parameters and adjust the volume overall and assign LFO to it. There's so many different things that you could do. So that's just the basic capabilities of Ultrabeat. If you want to know a little bit more about Ultrabeat, you can feel free to contact me or anybody at The Abstract or anybody at Recording Connection, and they will walk you through it. But for now, stay tuned for the next lesson.